Take some. Okay. Everybody present with their body? Has your mind joined your body yet? Come on in.
It does for a little while, and then it
Kind of slips off.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Brief visitor.
It's yeah, it's like that. Oh. Well, bring it back. Just have little brief breaks, and bring it back.
I heard someone say once that you succeeded when you caught yourself.
Absolutely.
That you're not.
That's the whole thing. It's not, we don't have to get attached to how many times, we don't catch ourselves. We just mind training is all about noticing when you're off track and putting yourself back on track. It's that simple. And that's success. That's, so nothing to worry about as long as you keep paying attention. And then when you find yourself not paying attention, you go, oops, let's pay attention. Oh. So I'm sure your minds are now present, except, those of you who are having conversations with each other, And what do you see, Roy? You can't help it. It's very hard to ignore, what's right in front of my eyes. So I'll close my eyes. So now y'all can just do whatever. So really try to take a couple of breaths and relax into your body, sitting here. I was listening to something the other day and it reminded me that your body's always in the present. And so when you bring your mind to, join your body, it helps you be in the present. Now, the present might not seem very exciting, but it's the only moment that we can choose to do something with. We can't change our past. Future hasn't arrived. But this moment, we can make a choice. So just setting the intention to be here now. And then you could make the choice to set an intention for this time. And because we're working on trying to loosen our grip on the self-centered mind, we want to always bring to mind that whatever we do, may it be of benefit to the beings around us. And this, of course, ripples out to benefit the beings around the people who are around us, and so forth. It reminds me of Mother Teresa's, it's not about great acts, it's about small acts with love. And if you notice that you're anxious, you can remind yourself that there's nothing expected of you in this moment. Just enjoy your breathing. Let's think. May I be well. May all beings be well. May I be at peace. May all beings be at peace. So let's turn our attention to the four measurables. So remember to bring to mind people that you actually know. Their books right on that shelf. We probably forgot to put them out again last night after Medicine Buddha Puja. It's on page 34. Bring to mind people you care about, and we can expand our circle of concern from there. But it's always good to start with that real genuine, heartfelt wish for people we know that we care about, we worry about. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be grateful for the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Just take a moment to reflect on how wonderful that would be if that came true. But the thing to keep in mind is that a heart that wishes for those things, genuinely wishes for, that's a wonderful state of mind to have. Whether it happens or not, it's just a wonderful starting place to live the next moment. Just to, really caring about the happiness of others. It'll affect how we speak, how we're thinking, just, takes us a little bit of a distance away from that self-centered attitude. It just kind of makes, oh, well, I'm okay in this moment. May you be okay. And may I be a condition for that. The refuge prayer on page 98. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become Buddha. Thank you. Thanks, Nana. So how are we doing? Anybody murder anybody this week?
Not yet.
Not yet. Very good. I applaud your restraint.
Just curious how, at least the announcement I saw about,
Rinpoche.
yeah, that His Holiness, announced that he was reincarnated, and then after that, the investigation begins.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering why it was in that order, why there wasn't an
Just, I
investigation.
think maybe to encourage the students that he's been born. But they have to investigate. It's not enough. They have to make sure they identify the right person. And so then they investigate things. So,
I'm sorry,
What?
Tendron. I'm sorry, Venerable. Could you repeat that for those of us on the Zoom call that didn't actually catch what they said about it, please?
oh, His Holiness said, and I'm not quoting direct, I'm just trying to the best of my ability. It was just a short thing saying that the reincarnation of Lama Zopa Rinpoche is alive and living in Nepal. And that's it. That's all we know. That we encourage us to continue to say chant the names of Manjushri and the Migsay prayer, which we'll do this morning. So that's all we know. But if you haven't ever seen the movie Kundun about His Holiness's, when they found His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, and his investigation. I mean, not that it goes into any of the detail, but it's, it's interesting. Kundun, Kundun, I think. And if you read the Laudo Lama, it's the book of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's life, and when he was an infant, I guess an infant, but he would crawl up the hillside to kind of go, because my home's up there, pointing to the Laudo cave, and he was a recognized reincarnation of the Laudo Lama from in its previous life. So it's just interesting,
So is he a baby right now, or?
No, he's a fully formed human being. No, I don't have no idea. So, I mean, literally, that's all I know.
Probably one or two, right?
I have no idea. Lama Zopa Rinpoche was born 2 years before the Laudo Lama died. Oh,
It's different.
no, it's not different. That's the thing, is that people, your emanations, if you have the power of choosing your rebirth, of emanating to help others, you pick your time and place. So I have no idea.
And in that sense, you could be technically in two bodies at the same time.
Oh, enlightened beings and even high bodhisattvas emanate thousands of beings. This is why they are always whining us not to be angry at anybody, because it might be a bodhisattva. It's not a good idea to be angry at a bodhisattva. There's not a lot of merit there. So, but yeah. So, and this is one of the things to look forward to if you develop your mind, is that, you're no longer limited by this very, restricted samsaric form body. So, it's hard to get your mind around. I have no clue, but I like reading the stories about it because it's interesting. And it makes sense when I go backwards and think about what an enlightened mind, an omniscient mind would have to be. The fact that an enlightened mind knows everything all at once at every moment. They say it pervades everything. It's not it's not enclosed in a body. It's just everywhere. And so it experiences everything that's happening in every moment by everybody. Because when we become enlightened, we recognize there's no actual separation between us. So all of it's rather big, so, don't worry if it's just sort of like, yeah, I don't get that, or, oh, it's mind boggling or whatever. Doesn't matter. Just work on your mind, work on your behavior, work on your speech. That's the starting point. But we hear stories all the time of things that we can't imagine, both just things that you can't believe people are capable of doing that. And that's a trained mind. That's somebody who's worked with their minds for a long time, So, and when and so it's just this, if the teachings are true, you understand, the stages of the path, they fit together. They make sense. Whether or not we can accomplish even, bodhicitta, which is not easy to do. Bodhicitta, the uncontrived mind of bodhicitta is the mind that wishes to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings 24/7. So with every breath, that's its influence. It becomes a main mind. It influences everything we do. So even, I would imagine, not that I'm not a parent, but I can imagine even parents have moments where they don't have that mind for their children. Just brief moments. But I think it's sort of akin to the mind of parents, where once that child is born, for most parents, who have any kind of parenting skills or just any kind of affection for their children, it's a constant presence in their mind that they have this child that needs them and takes, that depends on them, So, and we're all of that, we're the whole sentient being family. So anyway, but yeah, sign up for the FPMT go to fpmt.org and sign up for their emails, because I'm sure you'll get one when more is revealed. So, but it's, kind of cool news. So, and really send prayers all the time to the people, trying to keep the FPMT going. They've lost both of the founder, they lost Lama Yeshe in 1984 and now Lama Zopa Rinpoche. They've been able to, endure and keep it going, all these years, and they will continue to do so. But I'm sure they could use all our prayers.
And Tibet.
Hmm?
And Tibet.
Well, Tibet always,
I mean, they lost Tibet.
Yeah, but I don't think they worry too much, because they're benefiting their exiled community and brought the teachings to the West. And we have to assume that some Tibetans, when they, reincarnate, they don't reincarnate as Tibetans, because it may not be the best condition. So anyway, so let's get to mind training, because that's the whole deal. We need to train our minds so that we don't get, I want to say, flummoxed by these kinds of events. I don't know why that word popped in my mind, but it's, we really want to develop a mind that flows with whatever, that doesn't get, doesn't have disturbing states of mind arise in, as a reaction to events happening. And that's not easy. That takes a lot of effort. So working on, keeping the mind, first of all, outwardly. Why does it help to keep our mind focused on others in order to reduce our reactivity?
That's the source of happiness.
Yeah, well,
Myself, it's a selfish reason.
Well, and that actually isn't the reason. What, if we're not self-focused, when some event happens, what do?
You don't take it as personally. You're considering their.
You still are right now.
Oh, you.
What do?
Oh, you're saying if something happens and I'm alpha centered.
You're not focused on yourself and something happens,
You help.
you help others. You look around, try to help, to try to do something. How can I, you see I mean, it'd be little things. You see someone drop a bag of groceries, you just go help them pick it up, but that doesn't happen if we're so self-focused. It will take us a while to even notice, or we'll figure we don't have time, or somebody else will help. So just orienting ourselves, always thinking about how can I be a benefit to the people around me, developing that habit, is so where you're not even thinking about what benefit it has for you, or you're just thinking about how can I be of benefit. It's a huge difference. Yeah.
I guess that's just a function that when you're not attached to that separation. And when you're not thinking of yourself and something happens, then that sense of separation doesn't stop you. That makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, but that's a consequence. It's a consequence of developing that mind. You don't have to do the other first. We don't have to realize emptiness to be able to think about benefiting others and to make our focus benefiting others. Thinking about how things actually exist can really help us when our self-centered mind arises, so that we can kind of go, oh, well, first of all, that's a mistaken mind. So it's reacting to the world from a perspective that's distorted already. Why? Because it thinks that the self is somehow separate, that somehow it's independent, doesn't need anybody else, that somehow, that it's, there's, almost a self that you have to, package in a nice, padded box with, cushy stuff and enough food to eat and all that kind of stuff. But of course, we don't exist that way. So the more we can, we think about how things exist when we're not interacting with anybody else. It's a good habit to do while you're walking down the street, driving your car, thinking about, oh, this car doesn't exist the way it appears to. I don't exist the way it appears to. All these other cars don't exist the way they appear to. It's wild. Now, still pay attention to the other cars will still hit you and you can hit them. So it's not that you want to imagine that you could dissolve the car and nothing bad can happen. That's, probably not going to be correct. So, but we really need to get that, training the mind to be able to really let go of worrying about the self can be so beneficial to others, obviously, and to our own peace of mind. So last week we talked about the third point. I think the third point or the second point. We talked about the second point. With the ones with banishing the one to blame for everything. Tonglen, having that ride upon the breath. So this week, not that you just had mastered that yet, not like that. But this is just to give a sort of an idea of where we're heading towards and some tools that may help you get there. I knew how to use this thing, it helped. Okay. So who's the one to banish? I did that again. I said who. What do we do to banish?
Self-centered.
Self-centered attitude. And then we want to meditate on the kindness of all sentient beings. Right? Practice a combination of giving and taking. That's the Tonglen practice that those of you did meditation did today. Giving and taking should be practiced alternately. And you can do it with the breath. You can have it right in breaths where you're breathing in the suffering of others and you're breathing out all the causes of happiness to others. And we should begin by taking from ourselves, like Graciela had mentioned, that you can think about yourself in future moments, and you can take the suffering away from your future self. It's in good qualities. It's especially helpful when you have something coming up that's going to be difficult for you. So you can kind of imagine what suffering's going to arise for you, what kind of disturbing minds, and breathe that in. And then you breathe out the skills you have that will help you handle it in the future moment. So that's where, when it says, that we should begin by taking from ourselves, that's the first step. But as you're like driving your car, you can be sitting there breathing, in the suffering of others, and breathing out the skills to create the causes of happiness, and that can become a habit. And how do you think that would impact your ability to lessen your self-focus?
I find that I'm driving better.
Okay. Yeah, because you're worried about others. You're thinking about others. You're wanting to make sure you're not being reactive to others. Some of our worst driving habits are because we get so indignant about other people's driving styles, and then we just kind of like, how dare you? You're endangering my life, and meanwhile, we honk the horn or something, scared somebody else, so these practices fit together, yeah.
I wasn't here last week. So
I'm so sorry.
yeah, I me too. I'm sorry, I had to miss it. Breathing in the suffering of others.
Yeah.
What do I do with it?
It goes into your heart and it just explodes all your self-centeredness. So it all disappears.
Really?
Their suffering and your self-centered mind. That's what you picture.
Okay.
You just picture that, that self-centered, greedy mind, is like a dark, 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 dark rock at your heart. And then you can breathe in this dark, dark liquid. Ooh, you destroy it all. Let it implode, like whatever you call it. And then it's gone. You're not polluting the atmosphere, no worries. This attitude of wanting to take on the suffering of others is what destroys our self-centeredness. So if you have trouble with even that idea, if you're a parent, think about your children. How, if you could take their illnesses away, if you could take their suffering away, if you could, you'd happily do it. Well, the way to be able to develop that mind is to let go of that self-centered spot where you're not worried about how you might suffer if you traded places. All you're thinking about is you wish it was gone for them. So it's just a mind training in looking at the world from that perspective instead of always looking at the world from the perspective of what's in it for me, or am I in danger, or how am I going to be hurt, or is this person going to take advantage, or is this person going to say bad things about me, or blah, 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 all the nonsense that we think about that just makes us miserable. If we just turn it around and think other people are thinking that way and how sad that is. May I be a source of, comfort or, being a source of being at ease for others. So it's not about magic. It's not like we can magically take someone's suffering away and make it disappear. It's about recognizing that if we would get rid of our self-centered mind, we could reduce an awful lot of self-suffering in others and ourselves, because we will do no harm. We may make mistakes in our efforts to help. We may be, not skilled yet at really reading the situation. But if we keep listening with that open mind to what is it they need instead of what do I want to give, you see the difference there? So, because often that's where we give from. We give from a self-centered place of what I'm willing to give, what's convenient for me to give, what, and that's not gonna work out as well. It's a starting point, but it's still, we want to train ourselves to be able to be in tune to what is it that other people might benefit from their point of view. See, what does that mean? You have to pay attention. You have to be listening, not thinking of what you're going to say next. You have to be listening to what's being said, that kind of thing, or body language, or being brave to be able, if someone clearly appears upset to you, to enter that space. And to start developing skills of what do you say in those situations? What works? What doesn't work? Like that, evil word, why? Why are you upset? It's probably not a good place to start. Even though that's not what it's intended. It's not intended as any kind of, prove to me that you're justified being upset. But it's a way people hear it. So, and then you ever listen to someone's story and kind of go, why does that bother you? So that's not listening with your heart. Or it's actually listening with your heart, not their heart. You need to listen with their heart, Because it isn't the story that matters. It's the pain that matters. Doesn't matter. We all create suffering for ourselves through our story in our mind. And it's just because we don't know what we're doing. We think that, if I just worry enough, everything will fall into place. I'll come up with a solution to all these things. And of course, that doesn't work. But, So the next point is transforming adverse circumstances into the path to enlightenment. So this is a verse, I think, out of maybe Guru Puja, I don't know. Anyway, when the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, transform adverse circumstances into the path to enlightenment. Reflect immediately at every opportunity, and then the supreme method is accompanied by 4 practices. So when the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, so what is that getting at?
That's very much where we are today, wouldn't you say? The way people are,
Depending on your point of view, yes, I would say so.
yeah, I mean, people are just, the anger, they're, just, everybody's angry. Everybody's also thinking about themselves, and also,
Everybody's fearful.
yeah, and catering to the, to money, just the jewel that we spoke about, right?
And these conditions, not those particular conditions, these conditions are always going on in samsara because we don't know what we're doing. The inhabitants of samsara do not know what they're doing. And so we create misery for ourselves and others, you know? And what's ripening for us is the fruit of our own past action, you know? So since we don't know what we're doing, a lot of the fruit that's ripening is not very pleasant, you know, because we created the cause for that. So what do we want to think about? Okay, say like, for example, you know, it's COVID time, you know, there's a pandemic, you know, how can we work with having an illness or fear of an illness?
It's temporary.
Understand that it's temporary. So that's one thing. I mean, either you die or it's temporary.
Not the only
And so that's temporary. Yeah. It's not only happening to you. Yes.
It's an opportunity to practice compassion.
It's an opportunity to practice compassion. So every moment of your own kind of whatever, freaking out, suffering, just boredom, whatever it is, you can know that there are many others feeling exactly the same way and have compassion for yourself and all of them. What else? You can take precautions so that you don't infect somebody accidentally. You know, you can worry about them as well. I know it's hard to come up with those. Yeah. So we can also, if we get sick, so you did everything right, you know, you did everything by the book, you know, you got your shots, you did all that kind of stuff, you didn't go anywhere that you can think of, you know, it's just, and you get sick. So then what can you think? Oh, life's not fair. Is that going to help? No.
You can try
What
to
can you
help
think?
someone.
I'm sorry?
You can try to help someone.
Yes, but not if you're sick.
Exhausting some negative karma.
You're exhausting some negative karma. And so you can think things like, oh, whatever was created the cause for me to be sick, which is usually harming someone else physically in the past. That's the cause of illness in the present. You know, you can think, oh, let me never do that again. Let me try as hard as I can to never harm someone and cause them physical pain. You know, so you purify any seeds that haven't ripened with this illness. You can practice Tonglen. I'll just take on the suffering, taking and giving. I'll take on all the suffering of all the people who are sick right now. May it crush my self-cherishing mind. No. And the more you can genuinely wish that, I wish I was the only one who was suffering with this. You know, wouldn't that be wonderful if I was the only one suffering with this? And we can do that with any circumstance we're having. Is just, you know, really try to take that thought in. You know, not because we can do that, but because that mind is always looking to benefit. You know, and you can imagine, I mean, you know, in our good moments, we can imagine how pleasant that is to have that kind of mind instead of the mind that's already always worried about themselves. Oh, but what if I get sick? Or what if I lose my job? Or what if I do this? Or what if I all those of, you know, you know, It's not that we don't have to think about things that could happen and plan for them and da 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 da. But there's a huge difference from problem solving for possible occurrences, planning for them, getting your affairs in order, all that kind of stuff, and dwelling in it. You know, just deciding, oh, I can't do this because, you know, I may be harmed. You know. I mean, can you imagine what the world would be like if everybody felt that way in every moment? There would be no rescues at all. You're on your own, kiddo. Good luck. You know, fires would just burn uncontrollably until they stopped. And we have to, you know, it's in that, it's a mind that's willing to say, okay, I'll take this risk, an informed risk. You know, they're trained to do these things. That's why they stop the untrained from going into the same situation. You know. You know. But it's like, you know, so we really want to think about how much we benefit from a mind that isn't thinking about themselves, but is thinking about how they can be of help. And so become, and then want to, you know, create the aspiration to become one of those minds, to have that mind. So the 4 practices that I was giving it, that this section gives references, is referring to things like accumulating merit. Accumulating merit is doing good things. Because merit is just the positive potential we placed on our mind stream that will ripen as something positive in the future. You know, so it's from doing something positive. You know, if we develop an attitude of sharing prosperity with others, you know, practicing generosity of resources, finances, of time, you know, whatever we're able to give, you know, whether it's, you know, service or money or whatever, you know. So this creates the positive potential to have resources in the future, you know, and also the habit of wanting to share those resources in the future with others. You know. Then when we do something positive, we dedicate that positive potential to benefit others, all sentient beings. You know, that's what we do at the end of practices. We dedicate, you know. And this is that, again, that idea of wanting to develop that mind that's always thinking, how can I benefit others? You know. And then having the aspiration to attain Buddhahood, that which is also something we dedicate towards, you know, by the virtue of this merit, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings, you know, because it's a way of, you know, this is mind training, you know, so it's about you practicing this mind, you know, oh yeah, that's right, it's not about me, you know, and trying to develop this heartfelt wish that that's the, you know, that is the driving force in your life, is wanting to be of benefit. Now, what concerns come up? Y'all all ready to go for it?
I don't have enough to give.
That I don't have enough to give. How can we counter that? I mean, one thing you can think about, this is like, you know, is if I don't have enough to give, I created the cause for that. Do I want to repeat it? Do I want the future not to have enough to give? You know, so this is why, you know, they do things like practicing offering water bowls, because it's basically free. But you develop it with a mind that says, wow, I wish I was actually giving, you know, gold or medicine, or whatever you're thinking of, that would be a benefit, you know, but it's, so it's this mental attitude. Okay, I may not have financial resources to give, but do I have any time I can give? Or can I use my time in a method of giving? Like when you're at work, you know, just having that attitude of, oh, I'm glad to be here and glad to be of help. And how can I make sure the business survives and yada, yada, yada. How can I help my coworkers? How can I, da, 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 da. You know, so it doesn't have to be, you know, you have resources. So first you have to kind of go, is that true? Do I really not have enough resources to give? You know. You know. You give small amounts of money in order to be able to have resources in the future, you know, because if what creates the cause for not having resources, you know, so we know generosity creates the cause for resources. What creates the cause for not having resources? Stinginess. Hoarding, greed, you know, that feeling of never enough, you know.
Fear.
Yeah, but it's a fear of a particular type, you know. So it's, you know, I have to keep it for me,
Right.
you know, or my children,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever, you know, whatever your thing is. So you want to work on that. But that's a good, I mean, that's the kind of obstacle people have. So when it's, you know, time. I remember, I think I've shared this before. One of the students one time, years ago, years and years ago. In fact, I don't think I was a nun yet. And a student asked Geshe Gelek, well, what if, you know, you know, I've gotten home from work and somebody calls me up and they need something and I'm really tired and and he just sat there going, yeah, so, you know, he was pretty new to the country, so he didn't understand that we really don't get that. You know, and it just, and of course you see it in their behavior, you know, they do it anyway, you know, and it's just, but you know, this isn't saying you can't take care of yourself. It's about learning what your limits truly are, you know, because some days we overestimate how much rest we need. We also underestimate the happiness we receive from helping. The peace of mind that gives, you know, it's like, you know, have you ever had a good day of work, you know, where you just have a good day of work and you come home, you feel really good about, you know, it's the same thing. When you help somebody else, you can have that same feeling. This was good. You know, so we have to really play with our obstacles in our mind. You know, we have to ask ourselves, is it true? And sometimes, yes, it is true. You don't have the energy. If you do that, you know, you're not practicing sufficient self-care. You know, we have to take care of ourselves, but we have to test our boundaries. You know, if you're always suffering from burnout, you know, where you really hope nobody ever asks you for help again, you haven't been practicing enough rest. And you probably haven't been working on the mind that sees helping others as an opportunity. You know, it just is, it's become just a drain to you. And so that takes some effort to change, you know, and a lot of self-care. You know, renourishing ourselves. That a word? So if you've never nourished yourself, I guess it's not a word. But... Okay. So accumulating merit is one of the 4 practices. Purifying negativities, which we've talked about, you know, having strong regret for our past negative action, you know, so that when something really negative happens to us, we can think, oh, I created the cause for this. And man, I really don't like how this feels. And I created this feeling in someone else in the past, you know, and I'm sorry about that.
Does that help to release? It helps to release your feeling like there's something wrong with what's happening.
It's underscoring cause and effect. It's just you created the cause, you're experiencing the effect. If you don't like the effect, quit creating the cause.
And when you acknowledge that cause, that you
Did
are
something.
that cause, that helps to release. What am I trying to say? I'm not sure.
Okay, so keep thinking about it,
Okay.
you know, but it isn't you. There's nothing you can point to that says, that's me. It's just some moment in the past that you did something with body, speech, or mind that caused harm. And now you're reaping the results of that. But you are not that. You're just a series of events. And this one is because this is whatever, you've met the conditions for that seed to ripen. You know? So it can help us decide, I'm going to abandon it. That might create this result because I want happiness. I don't want suffering. So, you know, and I certainly don't like, and one of the reasons we don't like it is now we know how it feels to receive that kind of harm. And we don't like it. So we have to, you know, we can go out of ourselves and realize I've caused this harm to someone else. They have felt exactly like I feel right in this moment. And yuck, you know? So we take responsibility for causing harm. And then we resolve to try to do our best not to do it again. And then we actually try our best not to do it again. So what does that mean? We reflect on it. We think about what are the reasons that I would think this was okay, you know, so that I can have reasons to support myself to not do it next time. Because we rationalize, don't we? Some opportunity comes up and we rationalize why it's kind of okay to do it, you know? So, you know, we want to say, no. I want to be able to think more deeply than that and not use my rationalizations to just get what I want in this moment. To understand that my actions have consequences. All of them have consequences. And so I don't want to create any that are creating the cause for suffering, both in this moment, for the other persons, or the people involved, or for myself in the future. That make any sense? Yep.
Should we look for the opportunity to say, I'm sorry to whoever was affected by us?
Yeah, but mostly you won't know,
Mm.
unless it's a habit you do a lot, and then you do know, you know, and
Right.
so apologies are great if it's appropriate.
Right.
You know, like it's sort of like, you know how you have to be careful about, like if you cheat on your spouse, before telling your spouse, you have to really think about, are you trying to share the pain? You know, that because now they're going to feel really bad. Say you've made the decision not to cheat on your spouse again. Can you carry the burden of knowing that you did that without giving it to them so they can share in that burden? You know, I mean, so sometimes apologizing is not the appropriate action. Just taking responsibility for it and making the decision not to do it again. You know, now it may still be appropriate in a relationship that you know, share that with someone else, but it may not be. An awful lot of people are just saying, you know, actually, this is partly your fault, you take it. You know, so we really have to think about, you know, things. It's never simple. It depends. Often it's simple. And you just say, I'm sorry, I was very short-tempered with you yesterday. I'm really sorry about that. You know, I'll try not to do that again. And if I do, please feel free to say something. You know, I'm trying to do that, not, I'm trying to be better at
Not react.
not be reactive. I was just thinking about myself, whatever, so we just, so we work with it. We don't try to buy our ways out of it. Well, I'll just show up next time with a gift. You have to take responsibility, at least in your own mind, whether you share that with others or not. So we want to develop that sincere regret of responsibility that I did, that if you believe in cause and effect, then what happens to us, we created the cause for. And so we need to take responsibility for that. It's true for the good stuff too. Every pleasant feeling we have, we created the cause for that. So we want to rejoice in all those moments. Ooh, I think I'll do this again. That takes some education, because it's not just, it's not like you do something good and then immediately someone gives you a reward for that, right? I mean, they might, but that's not what it's about. It's like every piece of chocolate cake I've ever had is the result of some kindness I've done in the past.
Until you overdo it.
And then guess who created the cause for that? So we have to, we recognize that, okay, what do I know what causes pleasant feeling? It's positive actions in body, speech, or mind. So having the resources to be able to go buy chocolate cake is part of that. In other words, being able to afford something I like, that I enjoy is an effect of generosity in the past. Yeah.
So just like the act itself, I am not that bad act if I did something wrong. I'm not that good.
Exactly. But in that moment, I did a good job. We don't have to work. There is no me to hold on to. That's our problem, is we keep thinking I'm trying to build up a thing that becomes a good person me.
We've had this ego so long.
Seriously. Yes, it's beginning this time. Not just this life. You think we get tired of it. Yeah. No, you're right. And it's not doing us any favors. So when we listen to it, we have to ask ourselves, am I an idiot or what? It hasn't worked for me in the past. Why do I think it's going to work for me now? I mean, it's challenging, but we have to understand that the reason our ego is so strong is because of this ignorance about how we exist. It's just that we really misread the situation. So when we have a strong, but what about me? You can kind of go, yeah, what about me? What me am I talking about? It's just ignorance. I say that like it's easy to realize. But those are moments where we can work with it, where we can realize, who do I think I am? That I'm all caught up in, this, like, we're just a series of moments. And only in this moment do we have choice. We don't have to worry about our past moments in terms of trying to go back and erase them. That ain't gonna happen. But we can take responsibility for them and make better choices in the future or in this moment. And not beat ourselves up for the fact that it's hard. And it's going to rear its ugly head again and again and again and again and again, until it stops, because we keep interrupting it. I'm not going to follow that mind. I'm not interested in that mind. There's nothing new with that mind. Whatever. You just keep, and you keep reassuring yourself that you're not becoming unsafe by letting go of that mind. That you are actually protecting yourself from harm. It is our self-grasping that pushes people away. It's our self-grasping that starts arguments, that escalate to violence, that escalate to wars between nations. I mean, look what we're doing right now, I'm sorry. It's only America we want to worry about. Because we're not a part of this planet. I mean, we have to, it's these attitudes of self-grasping as if there's some self to defend against everything. When really it's our own mind that we have to work with and protect ourselves from, our own negative habits of mind. So that at the end of our lives, we can look forward to our next adventure, our next opportunity to meet the teachings, figure this out, continue to keep figuring this out, have a good rebirth, be able to be, another opportunity to be, a better parent, a better partner, a better child, a better whatever. I mean, and just like, or we could just kind of go, well, doesn't matter what I do, so I'm gonna, be back, but you're gonna suffer if we don't have any kind of, habit of looking at what we're doing and recognizing we have choice, It's the stringing all our choices together into some big, massive thing we can't manage, we don't need to do that. We just, we take each thing as it comes. And we make sure to reassure ourselves for all the, fears and anxieties and even, our cravings, we don't reassure our cravings that we'll give in to that. That's not a good idea. But it's, but really understanding that, don't worry, I'm not leaving you out. We're part of the sentient beings. We want to be happy. So we have to, if we need reassurance of that, we give it. If we're throwing a tantrum, we hold them until it passes. But we don't feed it. We don't sit there going, oh yeah, you're right. I can't handle this. So, because that just makes us not be able to handle it. And then you can make offerings, asking for protection, asking for blessings, asking for, from all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, all the enlightened beings out there, all the Dharma protectors, helping us with our practice. This is to remind us that we're not alone. There are other people who, just like us, are trying to work with their minds. They may use different techniques.
What are the blessings?
Blessings are, please, may I remember these teachings. May I trust in the path. May I understand that I'm not any one thing. There's no self to hold on to so desperately. It's just a way of saying, now, once you've really developed powerful, heartfelt attitudes towards these things, you may have the words of a Buddha appear to you. can guide you. I remember asking advice on how to say goodbye to my teacher when I left Australia. And I was so sad, so sad. I offered a mandala at our last teaching, and I was just, I couldn't stop sobbing. Sobbing, oh, trying to get, it was painful. But this, so I asked his attendant, what can I would like to make an offering. What can I do to, whatever, submit this karmic relationship for the future. So she gave me these things to do, things to do. And there was one, the last one was, if you want to make a financial offering, then you need to make it to like the nuns in Tibet, because he won't take it from you otherwise, because I was a nun. And so I kept saying, when can I come see him so I can do that? Finally, she made room. And I came in and I said, I did my prostrations. I offered with that caveat, because he sponsored a nunnery in Tibet, and he accepted it. And so when I was leaving, his attendant said to me, how did you figure out how to do all that? And I said, you sat here on the steps and told me what to do. She didn't remember it at all.
Wow.
She said it must have been Buddha speech. Or my teachers teaching to her, yeah. Trust me, I've never had that. But, who am I to say? So it's just, and she had tons of merit. She had been, my teachers attended for many, many years. She still is, so it's those kind of blessings can happen. They talk about Lama Tsongkhapa getting teachings from Manjushri, so, but obviously you need lots of mind training to get to the point where you're earning and, that you've got enough merit that it's going to ripen in that way, so. What can I say? And I still think, when I was, going through my divorce, and just was another, sobbing experience. Not quite the same as sobbing with leaving my teacher, but I just suddenly had this, vision of just being able to understand how both of us had ended up there in this spot, of this mess, and that the only solution was compassion. And I just needed to have compassion for him and compassion for me. And I needed to change. I had that was, I stopped crying immediately. Everything changed after that. I did not save my marriage, obviously, but I mean, the whole trajectory of everything changed. So, who knows? Those moments happen to us. And if we listen to them, it's like, oh, that was, thank you for that. So, but we have to develop our inner wisdom, because our ultimate refuge is our future Buddhahood. So when we go for refuge, there's a part of us that we want to cultivate that mind that's going for refuge in our future Buddhahood, that we will be able to integrate all the teachings, transform our mind, abandon all the negative actions, realize emptiness, become completely enlightened.
And when we die and go to our next birth, is some of that goodness that we've learned, or some of the teachings we've learned, go with us?
Do you have any good habits from being a child here in this life? Were all your habits when you were little through your life,
Right. Yes.
well, you brought those with you. So, yeah. Yeah. Now, aspirational prayers are something else that's very, very, very helpful to do. And those are things like, when you think about your next life, you really think about, may I remember that I want to benefit others. May I meet the teachings. May I, you know, may I be able to speak the language of my teachers. You know, may I be able to pronounce words that, you know, that would be nice. You know, all these kinds of things, you know, just to keep that framework in my mind, you know, like we all want to, let's, you know, pray to go to a pure land, you know, nothing wrong with that. So you can learn, but the only way to end up in a pure land is you want to go to the pure land because you want to be totally immersed in the Dharma so that you can be liberated and become enlightened quickly for the benefit of all sentient beings. Not just because it's a pretty place. I assume it's a pretty place. Why not? So, you know, but it's this, you know, that you really, you know, but and they recommend making very specific prayers, aspirational prayers. If they're heartfelt, you know, they're following from your refuge and all that kind of stuff. You know, these heartfelt, they don't have to be Buddhist refuge, but it's just, you know, that are the bridge between this life to the next. So it's a good habit to get into. You know, because you can do it before you go to sleep at night. Just say, oh, you know, didn't we say a prayer when we were kids? If I die before I wake, I don't know. May have to finish the chocolate before I go. What?
May the Lord my soul.
Yeah. Well, but anyway, I don't even know what that means. But but it's, you know, making those prayers, you know, like if I die in my sleep, which, you know, it's probably a great way to go, unless you're having a nightmare. But you know, you make these aspirational prayers. I always have a caveat. Because it depends. So, you know, better to be awake and be able to be thinking these thoughts, you know, but and that's why they say, you know, you listen to mantras, you listen, you know, things that bring that kind of heartfelt desire out for others. So but and next week we'll be talking about the 5 powers that we can practice all the time, and we already practice them, or at least we talk about practicing them, you know, about like setting intentions and dedicating, that are also practiced. They're practiced in life, and then they're practiced slightly differently at the time of death, you know. So that's the next point of mind training. And yeah.
I'm really feeling guilty about something as we're speaking, and I just wanted your viewpoint on it.
Okay.
Tonight is a Passover Seder.
Right.
My daughter invited me to come,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked her, is it going to be a big crowd? And she said, what's the difference? Then I said to her, who are you inviting? In other words, I want to know whether my ex-husband and his girlfriend and my ex-in-laws and everybody's going to be there. And she said again, oh, I'm not telling you.
What does that say to you?
Don't come.
Oh, really? I thought she was saying, I want you to be there. So I'm not going to tell you in case there's any person you might decide not to come.
That's why I mean, I really don't want to go tonight.
That's, you see, that's when we take responsibility. You know, is when we go, oh, where am I in this picture? Oh, I really don't want to go tonight. Why? You have to ask yourself why. You know, oh, because of blah, 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 blah. Okay. How does your daughter fit into that picture? How does your family experience fit in that picture? You know, you have to keep asking yourself.
I'm asking myself.
But if it keeps coming back to I don't want to go, you might want to try to find some reason that you don't feel guilty about that.
I don't want to see his smirking face. Basically.
Okay.
You know, and I don't want to be in the whole dynamics of all of those people. And it's not.
And you're okay with that for the rest of your life.
Well, I know that it's wrong, and
Oh, I didn't say it's wrong.
it's not being a good Buddhist.
I didn't even say that.
I know, but I'm feeling that it's not. I should be able to come and be magnanimous and smile and make,
Okay.
make the best.
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the
well,
situation.
and I should be a Buddha by now. I mean, but I'm not. So what do so I mean, we have to know ourselves, like it's like, okay, this could be an opportunity for you to stretch your skills and you might fail. You might get there and the smirky face comes up, or at least you think it came up because you were looking for it. But hey, that's another thing. But where you could say, well, I'm going to try to, so maybe you give yourself a time limit, if you can do that for a Seder, So, but you can, so you think about that, okay, and if you keep coming up with, I am not ready to do this, then you can say, I'd love to be ready to be there, but I'm not ready.
And that would be self-care.
It's self-care.
Yeah.
But you have to be, what you want to try to do is be sure it's self-care, and not just stubbornness, that you just don't want to have to deal with it. And, that's why I asked you if that's okay for you for the rest of your life, that you never go to these family gatherings because you never want to have to deal with it. That's fine. That's also your choice. But that's what I mean about, we need to see where we are and what is the price we pay for where we are.
What I'm hung up on is why my daughter isn't being upfront with me.
Well,
Just
then,
saying,
but you're a trip, it's probably just as simple as she wants you to just come because she's asking you to. It's not a trap.
Right.
Now her needs and your needs are different. So even though she may want you there, even though your ex-husband, her father, I assume, is going to be there, but that's what she wants. You don't have to want the same thing. You're not a bad parent, bad, whatever, bad Buddhist, bad whatever, we have to know where we are. If you can't go and behave yourself, and that, then maybe you shouldn't go. If you think, oh, maybe this is an opportunity to try, then you try, and with that knowledge that I can walk out whenever I want, and I don't have to walk out with a hut. I can just walk. But we have to, this is the kind of stuff we have to look at. We just kind of think, but we can make our decisions. That's what choice is about. You have agency. You can choose. There will be consequences because there's a consequence to every action we do. So it's just, if you don't go tonight, is it your last opportunity ever to try to be able to handle these things? Whatever. Yeah. There is no moment that's an end all be all. Even if you die in that moment, you just gotta be reborn. So, give yourself a break. And also don't try, if she's not telling you why, just let it go. That's her business.
I mean, I said to her, what's with you?
Do it.
And then she got
Offensive, yeah, because you're trying to control her. And so, let that go. She has agency too.
Want to come with me tonight?
How about shifting the. I'm going to take that with the sweet intention that I'm sure it had. So. Oh my goodness. And all this stuff's hard to negotiate, and we just have to keep looking, and then you might learn something today, whether you go or not. You may, you may just, something may bubble up and you go, huh, that's interesting. I'll store that information for the next invitation, so we learn. Oh, it's because sometimes we stretch ourselves and man, we get hit in the face with a exploding rubber band, and it's just doesn't work out at all. Other times it's like, oh, that was easy. It just, we don't know. And we can't let the fact that we don't know, if we think we have to wait until we're sure, we never could do anything. We have no ability to know how things will work out because it's going to depend on karma ripening. And all the conditions, who knows? Like when you're grateful that you didn't get on that plane that crashed.
Right.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm sure all the people who got on the plane didn't go, well, I know it's going to crash, but hey, I've got a ticket. That's what they're doing, So anyway, it's we're looking for certainty. You're not going to find it. That's one of those grasping, when we're grasping at certainty. Oh, I'm making the right decision and I'm certain. I love that. And you are, if you know that you can handle whatever comes up. That's what's lovely about training your mind. Is that oh well, if it's like this or it's like that, I can handle it. It will not disturb my peace of mind, my self-respect, my whatever,
If she doesn't go, she'll torture herself wondering
No, that's you.
what could have happened.
That's you. You're talking about you.
Yeah, okay.
That's in your opinion.
I just go, even if
That's
I've
again,
often pictured these family gatherings.
Marianne, that's again about you.
I know that.
So
I
let
know
it go.
that. Yeah. But most, well, I had no choice really, so I did go, and
Yeah.
sometimes they turned out to be
Yeah.
good. You never know.
No, you don't know.
Yeah,
That's right. And that's why we have choice.
yeah.
But we don't have choice about knowing. We don't, and we don't have to beat ourselves up. Like if you found out tomorrow he left the new wife behind, because it's a magnanimous moment and decided to leave her behind. Like that's anyway, you don't know. Like I meet people all the time that say they're great friends with their exes. I've never seen my exes again. I'm not good at that. I've had lots of exes. I have an ex that lives in Florida, and I swear there are very occasional moments where I thought, oh, please let me not bump into this person. Okay. Not because I don't like him, but because I was a total jerk. So don't want to relive that. Okay. So, we're not Buddhas yet. We just do the best we can. But we have to, that takes effort. We have to think about it. We have to, and then we have to notice what happens afterward. We make a decision and whatever happens, and then we reflect on that. So, and then we can use that information for the future. Okay. Nana's on it. Go. Surely it's time for prayers. This is page 244 or 246 in the book, if you can. So this is that moment where, we're taking our merits of any positive potential we've created this morning, and we're giving it away. Don't worry, you don't lose it.
Yes.
May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of our merits. May no living creature suffer from the evil or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid of the little, the mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food, the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill be free from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be free. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the misery of this world. Page 244, the long life prayer for His Holiness. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. You remember the page that Mixema is on?
The next one, 45.
I don't know how those, I can't pronounce any of those words. So I just need
45.
Mixema. Oh, it's, there it is. You got it. No, I don't. Scroll down.
There, I
Scroll down.
think that's it.
We're doing it in Tibetan.
Oh,
But isn't that Tibetan?
Yes, it wasn't there a minute ago.
Okay, yeah.
The page is that one.
If this is not on a page, look in your index, see if you can find Mixema. 245.
No.
It's not
And
that.
there's a link in the chat also for the PDF.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
It's just Tibetan, English, Tibetan, English.
Yes,
Yeah.
Where is
That-
this?
Separate PDF.
Oh, I'm looking at the English. Okay.
yeah, there's the English and the Tibetan.
Yeah.
We'll read this is for the Lama Zopa Rinpoche's reincarnation. Okay, so we'll read it in English once. That's at the bottom part of the screen,
Okay.
or every other line, depending on what version you're looking at.
Okay.
So this is the meaning of those words. Did you find it on page?
45.
It is different because it says a lot of secrets.
Oh, well, we'll
That's not
live.
over here.
The English translation might be slightly different. Don't trip up. Don't worry about it.
No.
It has the same meaning.
It's on the computer. It's I don't know English.
Everybody good?
All right.
Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion. Manjushri, master of stainless wisdom. Lord of secrets, destroyer of the entire host of Maras. Tsongkhapa, crown ornament of the sages of the land of snow. Lozandrapa, at your feet I make requests. Now we're going to recite it in Tibetan, but we don't, that middle line, Dupu Malu Zhangze Zhangwei Dag, don't even, we don't say that one, okay? But I have a recording of it. What do I have to do? Okay. I think we were citing it 3 times without that middle line. But this will help you hear how it's supposed to be pronounced, not how I pronounce it. Anyway.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Wrong.
Vajrasara Pramadanaye
I didn't fix
Tathagataya
that.
Arahate.
It says offering cloud mantra. Okay. Because what can I tell you? Let's try a different one.
Migme Tsewe Chen Chen Rezik jampeyan ganchen kepe tsuken song kapa lo sang da pe Shabla soade migme tsewe te chen chen rezik me kempe wang po jampe yang ganchen kepe tsuken song kapa lo sang da pe Shabla soade migme sewe te chen chen rezik me kempe wang po jampe yang ganchen kepe tsuken song kapa lo sang da pe Shabla soade.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you, Lama Lama. Venerable Lama's a nun up in North Carolina. So she can carry a tune. She's an all-purpose nun. Okay. All right. As always, thank you, everyone.